discussing, for example, rules of origin. You are able, through that platform, to be able to access data and information on different products that are made, that are available on the continent. We are able to even transact on the digital platform, right? And there is no reason why, for example, a Kenyan supermarket cannot buy directly products from a Zambian farmer. So integrating our digital platforms is going to be a critical element, not only to create transparency and openness and accountability, but also to help, as President Lungu has said here, to also help our SMEs establish market share in other distant countries, because on the digital platform you're able to see, I'm looking for pencils, or I'm looking for shoes, or you're able to see what is available across the African continent using that platform. Not only pay for it, but also have it shipped to you wherever you are on the continent. So the more we integrate, the more we learn from each other. At current, we are all at different levels of digitizing our systems and our economies, but we need to continue working together, enhancing and building on each other's experiences until we ultimately have a connected Africa. And that connected Africa will not only reduce cost of doing business, but will also create that much more harmony so that our traders, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, will be able to have access to the 1.3 billion people that President Museveni was referring to.
Okay. You've alluded to the SMEs more than once, which brings us now to you, Your Excellency, and then we'll come, of course, to the Commerce Business Council. But let's talk about preferential procurements, right? Some cash set aside from governments. In Kenya, for example, I think the number is 40%, where they help SMEs, small businesses, and advise them on policy and whatnot. But most of the time, the SMEs barely even meet the standards by the procurement offices to get to such levels where they can be facilitated by the government. We'd like to understand in Mauritius, as we try to get the context across the continent, how you work around assisting the SMEs, knowing some formal, some informal, but within that preferential procurement scheme of things.
Yeah, thank you. So, to help SMEs integrate and benefit from regional and continental integration, we must promote policies and measures that will improve the business climate. For example, eliminate barriers to SMEs in obtaining licenses and business permits to set up their businesses. The ease of doing business of the World Bank is a good indicator on how well countries are doing, and Mauritius is doing fairly well. We have to facilitate access to finance, and in Mauritius, the government actively participates in setting up funds for the SMEs through the government bank, Bank, and to some extent also through the State Bank of Mauritius. And currently, there is a national payment system which is being introduced to enable SMEs to have immediate access to cash for their transactions. And we have also introduced a regulatory sandbox license, whereby several digital lending platforms have been launched, such as crowdfunding. Also, we need to have flexible measures in taxation. But most importantly, we have to enable to have flexible rules of origin that can enable SMEs, for example, to import parts from across the world and make value addition. Produce in Africa, African products. But the question is directed to Mauritius, and in Mauritius, all these facilities that we're giving provides a level playing field between the large corporates and the SMEs who can integrate the larger economy. Another practice which is emerging is for government allocates a percentage of public procurement, that was in your question, to SMEs. So the SMEs have a share in contracts that are allocated by government. So these will help them to significantly promote their trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, when you hear that, I'm sure you have a lot to comment on in regards to global sourcing and that procurement.
Yes, I do. I'm coming from the Chamber of Commerce Network. I know what it is. We have got a lot of requests. It's not easy for you from the government side because the SMEs want to have preferences on small procurements. Women's entrepreneur wants to have their shares in procurements. And then national suppliers want also to give preferences to national suppliers, even as regard to the region or international suppliers. So it's not easy in the practice to solve where do we start to give preferences and where do we end up. But as I have the floor, as chairman of the COMESA Business Council, let me take the opportunity of thanking the head of states and governments for this high-level political dialogue. It's very important for the business community to meet you, to interface, to have a dialogue with you, and thank also the COMESA Secretary General for arranging this opportunity to happen. It's a big event. It's the first time maybe in the region we are having that policy dialogue. I wish that in the future we have more policy dialogues like this. And I'm sure at national levels there is this dialogue between government and private sector. One of the strengths of Mauritius is that we do have meetings chaired by the Prime Minister with the different ministers, with the different private sector organizations and representatives of the business community. And this is where we can, make progress, where all the problems are solved, and this helps the country to grow. And this is where, on the count of the President has mentioned it, on ease of doing business, on ease of the governance issue, Mauritius is making a lot of progress. I know Kenya also is making a lot of progress. And the issue of connectivity, which is a big problem for the business community. I'm thankful again to President Kenyatta, who mentioned during his state visit in Mauritius that on this issue of connectivity, he is personally make an engagement that we will have a shipping line between the port of Mauritius and the port of Mombasa, which will open the gateway not only for Mauritius, but for the whole Indian Ocean islands to the regions and to the African region, which will help the Indian Ocean islands to increase their trade within the region.
Perfect, thanks. But let's hear COMESA perspective. We've said, as we establish new industries, the value chain seems to see a lot more informal sectors pick up. So we've been struggling to get them to get the formalized system so we can formalize our revenue and whatnot, right? So how are you working around collecting or having a more converged approach for the informal sector that is there currently?
Thank you very much. I'm coming in last, but firstly let me just say that we have had in the trade space in the last few months very clear signal from the political level at continental level that Africa is ready to work together and integrate, to look inward. And I think now the challenge for us is how do we make sure that we unpack that to ensure that all levels of economic activity are carried along. This is why I'm particularly happy that this dialogue is happening today. And I really want to thank the Excellencies for finding their personal time to sit here and signal the commitment by countries to move forward and have Africa trade amongst itself.